training the mind before reality does. Imagine waking up and deliberately picture losing something you value. Your job disappears, a relationship ends, your health falters. Something you rely on is suddenly gone. This is not anxiety spiraling out of control. It is a controlled exercise. Practiced for over 2,000 years, the Stoics called it Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. At first glance, it sounds like the opposite of what most people are told today. Modern advice often emphasizes positivity, visualization of success, and protecting your mental space from negativity. The Stoics went in a different direction. They believed that avoiding thoughts of hardship does not make you stronger. It makes you fragile. Their reasoning is straightforward. Much of human distress comes not from events themselves, but from being unprepared for them. When something unexpected happens, it carries two impacts. The event and the shock. The Stoics aimed to eliminate the second. Seneca described this clearly. He argued that rehearsing adversity in advance softens its blow. If you have already imagined losing something, then when loss comes, it feels less like an intrusion and more like a continuation of something you already understand. This is not about becoming cold or detached. It is about becoming familiar with reality in its full range, not just its pleasant parts. There is also a deeper psychological mechanism at work. The human mind tends to assume stability. We act as if things will continue as they are. Our routines, relationships, and environment feel permanent. But this assumption is rarely examined. When it is violated, we experience it as disruption, even when change is inevitable. Premeditatio Malorum challenges that assumption directly. It replaces unconscious expectations with conscious awareness. Instead of assuming things will last, you acknowledge that they might not. This shift produces an unusual effect. It does not necessarily make you pessimistic. In many cases, it makes you calmer. When you briefly imagine losing something, a friendship, your home, your health, you often return to the present with sharper clarity. The ordinary becomes less invisible. What you have feels less guaranteed and therefore more significant. This is one of the paradoxes of the exercise. By contemplating loss, you increase appreciation. But the Stoics were not primarily concerned with appreciation. Their main goal was resilience. If you know, at a deep level, that things can change, then when they do, you are not mentally unprepared. You may still feel pain, grief, or disappointment, but you are not disoriented. You are not asking, "Why is this happening?" in the same way. Instead, you recognize it as part of the range of possible outcomes you already accepted. This distinction matters. Confusion amplifies suffering. Familiarity reduces it. The exercise also reinforces a central Stoic idea: the difference between what you control and what you do not. Many of the scenarios imagined in Premeditatio Malorum involve events outside your control. By rehearsing them, you practice letting go of the illusion that everything can be managed or prevented. You begin to see that control is narrower than you thought, and that this is not necessarily a problem. The method behind the exercise, the effectiveness of Premeditatio Malorum, depends on how it is practiced. Done poorly, it becomes worry. Done correctly, it becomes training. The key difference is intention. Worry is uncontrolled and repetitive. It loops without resolution and often exaggerates scenarios without examining them. Premeditatio Malorum, by contrast, is deliberate and structured. You choose a specific scenario, explore it briefly, and then focus on your response. The Stoics were not interested in predicting the future. They were interested in preparing the mind. A simple way to practice the exercise is to take a single aspect of your life and imagine its disruption. For example, consider your work. What happens if you lose it? Not just the event itself, but the consequences, financial pressure, changes in routine, shifts in identity. Then comes the critical step, asking how you would respond. What remains within your control, your actions, your decisions, your ability to adapt? What falls outside your control? The event itself, other people's reactions, broader circumstances. This is where the exercise shifts from negative visualization to constructive thinking. Modern cognitive behavioral therapy uses a similar approach. One technique involves examining feared outcomes and breaking them down into manageable responses. By doing this, the mind learns that even difficult scenarios are not absolute collapse. They are problems with possible actions. This reduces the sense of helplessness that often drives anxiety. Another element shared with CBT is exposure. When you repeatedly confront an idea in a controlled way, its emotional intensity decreases. The unknown becomes known. The feared becomes familiar. The Stoics understood this intuitively. By bringing difficult possibilities into awareness, they reduced their power. There is also a practical boundary to maintain. The exercise should be limited in duration and scope. It is not meant to dominate your thinking or become a constant background process. A few minutes of focused reflection is enough. After that, you return to the present. This balance is important. Without it, the exercise can drift into rumination. The Stoics were clear that philosophy should improve life, not burden it. Another variation of Premeditatio Malorum involves imagining smaller disruptions, not just major losses. Delays, inconveniences, disagreements, these are more common and often more irritating in daily life. By anticipating them, you reduce frustration when they occur. For example, if you expect that plans might change or that people may act unpredictably, you are less likely to react with anger. The event still happens, but your response is different. This is where the exercise becomes practical rather than abstract. It shapes your expectations, and expectations play a significant role in emotional reactions. When reality matches expectations, even if unpleasant, it feels manageable. When it violates them, even minor issues can feel disproportionate. Premeditatio Malorum adjusts expectations to better align with reality. Independence from circumstance. At its core, Premeditatio Malorum is not just about handling difficulty. It is about redefining what stability means. Most people locate stability in external conditions: steady income, reliable relationships, predictable routines. These are valuable, but they are also inherently uncertain. When stability depends entirely on them, it is fragile. The Stoics proposed a different foundation. They argued that true stability comes from the ability to respond well to whatever happens. Not controlling events, but maintaining clarity and composure within them. Premeditatio Malorum is a tool for building that ability. By repeatedly imagining change, you begin to loosen the assumption that your well-being depends on specific outcomes. You see that while circumstances influence your life, they do not fully determine your response. This creates a form of independence. It does not eliminate difficulty or emotion. The Stoics did not expect people to feel nothing. Loss still hurts. Uncertainty still creates tension, but these experiences no longer destabilize you in the same way. You are less likely to interpret them as catastrophic or unjust. There is also a shift in how you relate to what you have. Instead of clinging to things as permanent, you engage with them more consciously. You value them without assuming they will last. This reduces both anxiety about losing them and complacency about having them. In a sense, Premeditatio Malorum teaches a kind of mental flexibility. You become less rigid in your expectations and more adaptable in your thinking. This adaptability is increasingly relevant in modern life, where change is constant and often unpredictable. Careers shift, technologies evolve, and social structures transform. Relying on static assumptions becomes less viable. The Stoic approach does not try to stop this change. It prepares you to meet it. There is also an ethical dimension. When you are less dependent on external outcomes for your sense of well-being, you are freer to act according to your principles. You are less pressured to compromise for the sake of comfort or security. This connects back to the broader Stoic goal, living in accordance with reason and virtue. Premeditatio Malorum supports this by reducing fear, particularly the fear of loss, and fear is often what distorts judgment. When you are not dominated by fear, your decisions become clearer. The exercise, then, is not about negativity. It is about clarity. It removes illusions about permanence and replaces them with a more accurate view of reality. From that perspective, resilience is not just endurance, it is alignment, understanding what can change, what cannot, and where your effort matters. In the end, Premeditatio Malorum is less about preparing for the worst, and more about becoming someone who is not undone by it. That is what the Stoics considered freedom.